Digital Dissection, a nerd podcast, can at times contain adult language and themes. It is not intended for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to the Digital Dissection podcast, where we take a closer and possibly unnecessary look at our favorite properties, creators, and topics. We are your humble hosts, Joe and Mark, two pop culture nerds dedicated to telling entertainment history before it's forgotten too soon. Join us on Facebook, Twitter, and our blog for more information on the show. We also love to hear from you, so why not write us at digitaldissectionpodcast@gmail.com. And now that we've got that out of the way, let's get to dissecting.
Joe, do you think it is time for us to do a reboot of this show yet?
Maybe. I think if we get better graphics involved, maybe it's time we can do this. And by better graphics, I don't know. I think that means we lose weight, then we can reboot.
I mean, at minimum, I think I need, I think I need a better representation of my chest area.
Yes.
Add a few more polygons to that whole situation.
Yep, I think that'll really help smooth things out. Not so pointy, less Madonna, more rock. I think is what we want here.
Absolutely. That's what the people want, or at least that's what I'm assuming they want, because they say nothing. Talking about rebooting properties, because it seems like every time you turn around, whether it's a film franchise, it doesn't happen with books very much, but in video games, there's a very specific property that this happened to multiple times. You might remember it. It's called Tomb Raider.
Yeah. This got at least, what, 2 reboots?
Well, that's a funny story, Joe.
Yeah.
And for the time being, we're going to hop into that DeLorean like we like to do for these retro reviews. This is going to be the 3rd retro review of this program and this season.
Yes, the trilogy.
Yes. Yeah, dude. It's hard to believe we're already on number 3 retro review of this year. But yes, we're talking about Tomb Raider's 2013 reboot. And as Joe has mentioned, this series has been rebooted how many times? Well, it is a very good question. Mostly because in 2013, we're going to go back in time, just like we did with the last couple of reviews, to let you know about the landscape. And this time, the landscape of 2013. Tomb Raider had 9 entries up to this point in time.
Yes, in the original contingency, correct?
Well, and that's where this gets kind of interesting, right?
Uh-oh. We're getting muddy already. All right.
So yes, we do have 9 entries in the Tomb Raider series up to this point. But what's happened to this series is a little weird, okay? For those of you who are completely unaware, the Tomb Raider series follows the exploits and adventures of a Miss Lara Croft. And
yes, a dual-wielding pistol aficionado, a fan of round sunglasses, does not care for tigers.
But she has a hell of a braid, though. Yeah. But
amazing braid.
Yeah, dude. So I remember playing this game. Her claim to fame in the beginning was the fact that, well, she had these very large triangular breasts, which we have referenced a few times on this show.
And basically wearing Daisy Dukes as well, I believe. Just raiding tombs.
I mean, you want the comfort, I guess, right?
Yeah.
You don't want anything weighing you down. Granted, your legs are exposed, but hey.
I mean, and I can't attest to the comfort, as I've never worn shorts that short before.
Oh, let me tell you.
I think the shortest I've gone is when my 6th grade basketball team discovered that my middle school still had the shorts from the 70s teams hanging around, and we thought it would be a ball. Throw those things on.
Dude, it's like ordering off menu. You don't know what you're missing because you don't know it's there, and
precisely.
Yeah. And so for some people beyond like the original couple of games in this series, I was one of those that kind of stopped after like the 3rd entry. I didn't actually keep playing beyond it. But yeah, the Tomb Raider series ended up getting this kind of weird pseudo reboot, even though Laura is still there, or Lara. You want to say Lara or Laura?
Laura? I wish I was Laura, but Laura, maybe like Laura is how people who drink black coffee pronounce it, but then people who drink only the finest of teas say Lara.
There you go. With the pinky out, of course.
Pinky out. Lara Croft.
Yes. Well, Lara's story would get changed a couple times, actually,
Mhm.
throughout, the next couple of games after the first 3 that I mentioned.
Mhm.
And usually what it would involve is, the action kinda being the same, the format would be very similar in each one. But yeah, like, they'd tweak her origin story a little bit, uh, time after time here. So what ended up actually happening, if you remember a little studio named IDOS, you remember IDOS Software back in the mid to late '90s? They were kind of all over the place, right? Yeah.
Honestly, like that is not ringing a bell for me. I'll basically be forthcoming with that. During that time in the 90s, I was much more concerned with the game than I was the developer. So I
Oh,
knew
yes.
like half the people who made the games that I played.
Yeah. Well,
Hmm.
actually, I should actually step back for a moment. IDOS was the publisher of the game. The actual developer of the game was Core Design. Okay, so
Hmm.
Core Design was a UK based. Can't even speak today. UK based. It was a UK based software company.
Yes, the ones who
Uh,
say Lara.
yes, they stayed lower there, and they actually ended up having such success with the initial Tomb Raider series but they ended up making games every goddamn year after the first
Oh,
one.
wow, they were Call of Duty before Call of Duty was a thing.
Yeah, yeah, dude. People weren't complaining about annual releases just yet back then
Mm-mm.
because we hadn't seen it very much.
No, no, we
Yeah,
haven't.
but it was 1996, Joe. It's a lot different. Okay.
Very different landscape, and I believe, I never actually owned or rented any of the Tomb Raider games growing up, because
Yeah.
my parents lived in that same universe where they were totally fine with gratuitous violence, but heaven forbid boobies be jiggling in my video games, not allowed.
Oh
So,
yeah.
my experience with the original Tomb Raiders was solely on a, like, I think a preview disc that came with the PlayStation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's how they sucked us in back then. They give you a little
Mhm.
taste.
A little bit, just a bit.
Yeah. We'll give you just a little bit of this. But, yeah, dude, so anyway, 1996 rolls around, they got themselves a banger. They know that people love it. It's flying off the shelves,
Mhm.
and they do what a lot of people do when they're not sure what to do next. They just keep doing the same old thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
You just
but
slap it on a lunchbox, put it on everything, and just keep putting it out there like Dr. Ian Malcolm says.
yeah, yeah, well, eventually, this stopped working out so well for core design,
Mhm.
and this is where people kinda had different opinions, okay? There were some that thought maybe core design just got sick of making these games every single year, maybe their enthusiasm waned because of that, right?
Mhm.
Maybe they wanted to do different stuff, you know?
Yeah.
You know, it's like Hall& and Oates or, it's like, Simon& and Garfunkel after a while, they just wanted to do different things and
Mhm.
break up
Maybe
the band.
just wanted to leave the tombs alone. Like,
Yeah.
no, like, we just leave them. Like, that stuff belongs in a museum, or left alone, we should probably stop rating them.
Yeah. Yeah, at this point, that's kind of where people are starting to, lose enthusiasm, not just at core design, but also in the populace that played the game because the Angel of Darkness, Joe, have you heard of this game in the Tomb Raider series?
I have not, but it's such a, I believe, I don't know if this is the right term, but corny ass name that there's no way it can be good.
Well, unfortunately, this would be like one of the last games that Core Design made in the Tomb Raider series, okay?
Mhm.
And opinion was kind of split on this. Like universally, the sales were pretty bad, but what people were complaining about was that it had a ton of glitches, which you
Mhm.
you and I both know means well, the game was most likely rushed.
Most likely, yes.
Yeah,
Mhm.
which plot twist, it was.
Mm.
And, what some people have said, though, is that, yes, it was rushed, but the core story of this game
Mhm.
actually didn't bother them, right? Like,
Okay.
the writing seemed to be there, but you could clearly tell the time constraints and what they had to do really influenced how bad this game ended up being.
Mhm.
So, regardless of what it may have been, core design, was kind of on ice at that point. Whether it
Mhm.
was, like I said, just enthusiasm, maybe people are just like, "Well, it's
Yeah,
already dead."
just burned out. Yeah, I mean, so we're getting here is that the grosses were too low, but the people didn't really want more at this point.
That that is absolutely
Mhm.
correct, sir. Yeah. And what ends up happening, core design, they come up to him and they're drinking their tea with the pinky out and they go, "You know what? Uh, we're gonna take this and we're gonna hand it over to somebody else." So we have a new player. A new player has entered the game.
Ah.
Enter Crystal Dynamics. And Joe, this is who you would have seen in the intro to the rebooted series. Granted, you mentioned you don't really
Yes.
pay attention to those things.
Nope. Mm-mm. I
But
don't read the script.
yeah,
Script reads me.
yeah, that's fine. That's, we've been doing this for almost 100 episodes. I get it at this point. All right. But this is the studio, all right? Crystal Dynamics. If you remember, Joe, this was
Mhm.
advertised a shitload in the 90s. But did you ever hear about a little game called Legacy of Kain?
I have not. I mm, maybe, maybe rings a bell, but definitely didn't play it.
Well, at this point in time, this version of Mark in the mid to late 90s was reading GamePro and pretty much any electronic gaming monthly he could get his hands on.
Mhm.
And Legacy of Kain was this like action adventure series that honestly felt very similar to Tomb Raider, except it involved things like vampires and guys that wear scarves that frankly did it really well. Um, but either way, Legacy of Kain was all over the place in the mid to late
Mhm.
90s. Okay, and that's why Crystal Dynamics ended up getting the go ahead to take over Tomb Raider, because Legacy of Kain had what, frankly, Tomb Raider did in the beginning that kind of lost sight of, whether it was good gameplay or just great core mechanics, whatever you want to call it.
Mhm.
And so ends up bringing the development of Tomb Raider out of the UK and right back over to good old Silicon Valley.
Ah,
Um,
yes.
Yes. So Crystal Dynamics ends up making a couple titles in this series, right?
Mhm.
Um, the first one they did was Tomb Raider Legend, which ended up being like absolutely well received. People said it was a breath of fresh air because, well, it was actually a finished game for once.
That is a
So
plus. Whenever you want a game to do well, you typically finish the whole thing,
yeah,
make sure it works well, and yeah, that's a good start to making a game that people like.
yes, and of course, as I always say, always finish. No matter what you do, always finish. But
Yeah, no
yes,
faking it
yeah.
here. No
No,
faking it.
no faking it, no yada yadaing. No, go all the way.
Mhm.
So yeah, dude, Crystal Dynamics ends up getting on the right side of at least player enthusiasm. So Legend is the first title they do, and then they ended up making an anniversary edition of the first game itself, which oddly enough was supposed to be planned for the 10-year anniversary of the first game.
Mhm.
Due to some delays, it ended up being the 11th anniversary, but no one, no
No
one
one no
was,
one no one batted an eye. We're just happy to have it. Just happy it's here.
the 11th anniversary special, which no one really cared about.
No. Mm-mm.
But yes, so as we have mentioned before, we want to tell you the scope of 2013 and what was going on around this time. Well, if you've ever heard of a little company called Square Enix, Joe, does that sound familiar to you at all?
No, no, never heard of Square Enix. They don't make games. They don't make excellent RPGs or anything of that sort. No.
Yeah, they're
Final
they're
Fantasies or
independent.
anything.
Absolutely
Mhm.
independent. I
Yep.
I had to do a ton of research on them before we even got into this episode. But but yes, dude, Square Enix comes in and they purchase IDOS software. If we had the sound clip for "Surprise, motherfucker," that would happen right now. And IDOS software ends up becoming Square Enix Europe.
Ooh.
So anyway, Lara Croft at this point in time splits off into a couple things though.
Mhm.
So for people who are kind of going back and looking through this, you might notice that there is a sub-series featuring Lara Croft, but instead of the Tomb Raider, these games have Lara Croft in the name of the game, right?
Yeah,
So
Laura,
it's
yeah, yeah, yeah. See, this is the reboots that I remember before
yeah,
before we get there. Mhm.
yeah, exactly. Like this is kind of where I got confused as
Mhm.
these titles came out because I'm like, okay, well, Lara Croft I'm like, interesting.
Now
Um,
she's starring in her own video game that she's been starring in since the '90s. Bold
yeah,
move. Bold
yeah,
strategy.
yeah. Seriously, man.
Mhm.
It's like the Hartford by AARP, you know. But
Oh
anyway,
my god.
yeah, for the percentage of the audience out there that is in their 70s, of which we've got a few. but but yes, so anyway, we've got this reboot, and then
Mhm.
another reboot comes in with what's called the Survivor trilogy. which is where you and I officially got on this train. The Survivor trilogy would end up being what a lot of folks are familiar with now, where
Mhm.
Laura Cross, her like reintroduction in a way, kind of strips her down of what we know who the typical Tomb Raider was. And
Yeah.
this is going back to an earlier version of Laura that's never been challenged by anything before.
Mhm.
She has raided no tombs.
None.
Yeah, and she
No.
pretty much just has some relics from her family and some of the adventures they had been on.
Mhm.
So
'Cause
she's
yeah.
yeah, literally clean slate.
Exactly, because this is like one thing again, like I said, like I did not play the original Tomb Raider series, but one thing that was established in my preview disc and just even if you don't play it, you hear about the game, is that Lara Croft is basically like the badass extraordinaire. Where in this game, like that's completely gone.
Yeah.
Where instead she's smart. I think isn't she like an archaeology student at the start of this game?
Yeah, I mean, she's pretty
Hmm.
much, green in terms of any adventuring, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
she's gotten through academia, and
Hmm.
she's attached to essentially an expedition that has a lot of, like, these intern types, right? Like, they're all having their cafe lattes, and they just jump on a boat. We're we're looking for lost treasure, so,
As
yeah,
most archaeology interns, I assume, do. It is cafe latte and cruise time
yeah.
whenever you are ready to be done with your major. But yeah, so we get a very different Laura Croft here, or Lara Croft, where she is basically forced into becoming like she's backed into a corner. And that's what allows her to really, you know, achieve her badassery as opposed to years of training.
Very true, and there were a couple of changes too right out the gate with this new adventure, right?
Hmm.
So we're not just rebooting a legend and making her more vulnerable, softer, and not
More
softer in the
approachable, really.
yes, yeah, exactly,
Hmm.
exactly. There's no RBF to this Laura at
No, no,
all.
no, 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 no.
Yeah, but what she ends up doing here, there's a couple changes. So the
Mhm,
longtime voice actress Keely Hawes, who had voiced her for pretty much everything up to that point,
mhm.
is replaced with Camilla Luddington. And for the Grey's Anatomy fans out there, she was on that show. I have never seen that show.
But at this point, I assume everyone's been on Grey's Anatomy because it's going on its 18th season right now, and I only know that is because I had a conversation with a student where I mistakenly claimed it was on its 15th season.
Oh,
Gosh,
geez.
was I wrong?
Oh, geez. That just brought out full on Wisconsin. Oh,
Yep.
geez, out of
Oh,
me.
jeez. 18 seasons. What do you even talk about anymore, huh?
Oh no.
You had to
Uh,
have gotten every disease. Oh gosh, swine flu again. Let's just put him on the Dimetap.
they have to know the anatomy at that point. Okay, they
They have
have
to.
to know. But either way, a couple other changes in this. We've got traditional third person is what Tomb Raider pretty much did the entire time
Mhm.
from a perspective from this beginning. But now it's a new age, Joe. We've got over the shoulder third person, and
Oh
it's
yes.
yeah in the same vein as like Gears of War or
Mhm.
Uncharted. Definitely getting some vibes of wanting to copy Uncharted quite a bit here. What
A
about you?
little bit, yeah, because like you definitely have that. I mean, Uncharted took off at this point. I think when this came out, think like we had just gotten Uncharted 2. Um is where yeah, this comes between 2 and 3. And like, it's hard to say that, like, Uncharted 2 is I mean, until 4 was my favorite in the series just 'cause of just how good it was, but 4 was just a brilliant end to everything.
Yeah,
So, this comes out on the heels of the best Uncharted game that came out, and it's kinda got that same feel of, like, you're stranded and things get 10 times worse before they get better, and everything Laura seems to touch just kinda turns to shit,
yeah.
as what also usually happens with Nathan Drake.
Well, and I think what really happens here, right? Because you mentioned everything goes
Mhm.
wrong with Nathan Drake, but for Laura in this case, you're really dropped into absolute like crazy town pandemonium, right?
Yeah.
The opening cinematics for this game are for one in 2013, they were gorgeous. Even now, if you go back and watch it, still a very
Mhm.
visually stunning intro to this game.
Oh, yeah.
but yeah, she's traveling on this ship, right? They're trying to find this lost island, is all the good adventurers are always looking for.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, lost islands, lost cities, because we just lose everything, right? Well, this boat literally gets ripped in half by a goddamn storm, comes out of nowhere.
The perfect storm, you may say.
Yes, perfect storm. Although I didn't see Mark Wahlberg anywhere, but hey,
No,
whatever.
no. We assume he's there somewhere.
Yeah, he's probably there.
Mhm.
But anyway, yeah, dude, in that intro scene, and once again, we're not here to like spoiler the shit out of this, but we do want to tell you, like, definitely just check this out because this
Yeah.
intro cinematic it was like kind of heart pumping.
Mhm.
It was very quick. You don't have much time to even really settle into anything.
No.
Uh, you're not even introduced to any other characters really. It's just, Laura's hanging out in a boat and suddenly this thing's cut in half.
Yeah, just boom. I mean, if you don't believe us, I mean, that's gotta be on YouTube. I'm sure if you look up, 2013 Tomb Raider movie, it'll just be this
Oh,
with just all the cinematics strung together.
if you don't believe it, play the game for about 3 minutes and you'll
Yep,
be
you get
right there.
there.
So so either way, like, what was really fun about this though is that, I really enjoyed kinda setting or getting reset from ground zero, right?
Mhm,
Like, it's really easy to complain about, "Oh, another reboot again," but in this case, I do actually feel like they did a pretty good job with it because you're not overpowered. You literally have no survival skills.
mhm.
And right away, Laura ends up on this island. Fortunately, plot twist, they do survive. They survive the boat.
Oh, yeah.
But she gets thrown right into the politics and the bullshit going on this island. And she has to immediately survive
Mhm.
like a life-threatening situation. And I don't know about you, Joe. I instantly felt like every ounce of panic that she has in these opening moments.
Oh, yeah, like, the game does a really good job at that, and also it makes the whole believability of, like, any tutorial going on in this game of you having to learn it. It's like, well, she has to learn it, and she has legitimate stakes involved, so I do have to get this right, otherwise she will die quite quickly.
Yeah.
Mhm,
Well, and what was crazy about this is like right away, like you're already like on high alert because you had to survive a shipwreck, but then you're instantly thrown into a scenario where you're kidnapped. You have to find your way out,
mhm.
and it's claustrophobia like 101. This whole like early portion of the
Mhm,
game, you have to like you're basically crawling into a spot where like you've got maybe an inch of area to breathe in, and then you
mhm.
have to climb through like an even tighter spot, to get to your escape. And just when you have a chance to maybe take a breath, then you have to like go, oh great, I get to solve a puzzle now, and I've
Ooh.
got a piece of rebar sticking out of me.
Mhm.
So you have no immediate skills. You're starting over from nothing, and suddenly you have an extra hole in you that didn't start out with.
Yeah, that's never fun. Not a good way to start your day with
No.
extra holes. No.
Oh, not again.
Mhm.
But either
But, I
way,
mean, what's kinda nice, though, is that, like, again, like, the game, like, just it gets you right away. There is no, like, easing into the story. It's like, no, your ship is fucked. You're stuck on an island. You wake up, and you're kidnapped pretty much instantly, along with everyone else who survived your ship being wrecked. Because you do as you go through the game, you do rescue your friends as you go along, as well as a few of the shipmates that survive and don't get slaughtered by the people on the island. Um, I'm trying to remember exactly how many of your because not everyone survives. Not I don't think all you don't get to save all of your friends that are in this game. But it's kind of like again, like it doesn't give you a chance to like really almost breathe in the first part of the game. You've got to like just hit the ground running as soon as the cinematics start.
yeah, yeah. Which actually ended up being something that some of the critics of this game did come at, in terms of reviews. And for those of you in the audience and Joe, I'm going to say a term that may not be familiar to you. But Joe, have you ever heard of the term ludonarrative dissonance?
I mean, that sounds like it's made up just for a master's program somewhere and is not a real word.
Yeah, probably, right?
Mhm,
So what you just mentioned to me, Joe, right? This is where some of the critics of the game actually kind of jumped on this in the beginning, was that
mhm,
the narrative that the story of the game tells doesn't necessarily always match the narrative told through the gameplay, right? So you just mentioned that you land on this island and you end up being thrown into this strange kind of like cult-like brotherhood, right?
mhm,
And for those of you who haven't played the game before, really the main antagonists in this game, they're called the Solari Brotherhood, right? And you're introduced to them in the beginning without really a whole lot of context. You know, they're just existing. They're on the island, which you thought was uninhabited when you land on it, right?
mhm.
So you're understanding some of the mysteries of this island, or at least you're getting some clarity about them a little bit as you go. But there are times where you're doing things on this island that have nothing to do with the narrative itself, the broader overarching story, right? And I mean, she's a tomb raider. She has to go raid tombs at some point,
I
you
mean,
know?
if you're not gonna do that, why bother calling it Tomb Raider?
Exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah, exactly. You just call it Island Adventurer, Laura Croft
Yeah.
Island Adventurer, you know?
Mhm, not quite the same ring, but still fun.
Just a little bit different.
Mhm.
But, you know, I honestly thought that this was a, uh, pretty much an underhanded, half-assed attempt at trying to sound academic, just like you said,
Yeah,
you know?
it's people just wanna complain, I think is what it is. Like,
Yeah.
I have to wonder if the person even played the game. Like, did you just hear, like, "Oh, my friend played it, and he said I didn't actually raid a tomb very much, so why call it Tomb Raider? Imma look up a word for this, and we're gonna have at it in a blog. Here we go."
Well, I think for people that don't have a very in-depth understanding of Tomb Raider, and
Mhm,
they start here, the reason why this whole ludonarrative business doesn't matter at all to me is because you do start from nothing and you have to gain experience, and that doesn't always mean that you have to follow the storyline to get to some of these things.
mm-mm.
You know, if you wanna gain XP, you can go hunt down collectibles, right? Uh, there's a lot of stuff in this game that you can do if you want to take a break from the narrative.
Yeah.
Why not? You know?
Yeah, in that case, it's almost like you said, we did say, like, it seems to borrow a good deal of narrative and kind of like plot points from Uncharted, but really, it also goes really almost like if you have to compare it to another game, you can compare it more to like the Far Cry series, where you've got less of that's it's not necessarily like sandbox like Uncharted is. Like you get a limited area for a given chapter of the game, and then you move on and you rarely come back to that previous area. Whereas in this game, you can go back and revisit spots you've been before, except for maybe like 2 or 3 places. I think you can go
Yeah.
back and pretty much just if you missed a collectible or you missed like a side thing, like you can go back and do most of it and get XP that way.
Yeah. There are very few things you can truly miss in this game.
Mhm.
As Joe found out, you can miss very specific conversations with people as time has passed.
But you need to have all conversations so you can get a PlayStation trophy.
Yeah. Yup.
Yep.
Uh,
Cried just like I did when I figured out there's a Chin Pokemon in the damn spaceship.
oh,
Damn stick
man.
of truth, and I missed that one too.
That's why you gotta read the
Ah!
guide. You read the guide, Joe.
I just want to experience it myself the first time through, which kinda just makes me a glutton for punishment because I know I'm doing this to myself.
Yeah. Well, speaking of doing things to yourself, there are
Right?
some very deliberate things you have to do in order to get to some of these skills that you unlock in this game. And yeah, I know Joe's like going, "Wait a second here.
Like, you have to
You talk
clarify this very quickly, Mark.
you
I'm
talk you
very
talk
lost.
you talk
Hold
about
on.
talk about your dick? No, 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 no.
No.
I'm just talking about the idea of gathering experience, you know, doing the things, Joe, so that you can unlock stuff in this game because
Okay,
the
good. Because for a second, I thought we may have played completely different games from each other.
yeah,
Very, very different.
yeah. Yeah, you didn't have the adult only Tomb Raider because that's the version I
Oh.
played. Um,
Oh. Yeah,
no, dude.
no, no, mm-mm.
But that's why I actually thought this was one of the stronger elements of the game, and that once again kind of just saying, let's not even worry about the narrative driven stuff right now, because you do spend time building on the skills so that Laura becomes a better survivor,
Mhm.
or she becomes better with her weapons, or she improves upon the skills that she does unlock, right? Because you don't just start off with, everything that you would in a previous game. She's not just suddenly someone who has a ton of stamina or has the ability to use specific weapons. And that's where the I think the strength of this game really lies. It's in finding all these other things, and maybe not focusing on the struggle between this brotherhood and some of the things that are happening on this island.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
yeah.
as I say, like it seems to be a lot more of actually like developing like Laura's character. And again, like it seems like they really had this idea that they're going to establish a new version of Lara Croft who would be with us for multiple games. And this game did a good job of doing that.
Yeah, and I think it did a good job of balancing skill unlocks too,
Mhm.
because I think when you do skill unlocks, you can't just become a one person killing machine overnight. And with some of the skills, they're not specific things like, instantly do 90% more damage. Some of these things are as simple as you can now light a torch without having to have it touch fire or
Mhm.
whatever. You can just scratch the stone on a wall, and that's enough of a spark to light your torch, right?
Yeah.
Like those are little things that kind of give me a little bit more incentive to want to keep, doing the completion side of it.
Mhm.
And so that's really what I think is fun about this, is that you can either choose to actually do the things that will make you into the Laura that you know, or you can focus on some of these other things that just make the gameplay, maybe a little more convenient for you as you go. And so yeah, so that's what I think they did a really great job with in designing this. Um, and especially the weapons too. Like, do you remember how the weapons and upgrades worked in this game?
Didn't you have to like actually collect things from the map to actually invest into like the weapons to make them better?
Like, you had to get salvage,
Yeah.
and so kinda coming back to the
Mhm.
skills would actually help you get more salvage by doing certain activities, whether it's, hunting or,
Mhm.
just finding scrap or whatever. And instead of just having a game where, "Hey, I opened a chest and I found a new weapon," it's like, "No, no, no, I have a weapon, and now I have enough things that I've collected so that I can make that weapon better."
Mhm.
And so for me, it was more of a buy-in at that point. Like, I have the same weapon, but now I've made it that much cooler, and the attachment is just that much stronger for me, you
Yeah.
know?
And again, like you said, it's just I don't know, it feels like I don't want to say a little more real, but basically it does. Granted, it's still a video game, it's still very unrealistic. But like again, the fact that like, yeah, you could find like salvage and scrap, but if you don't up your skills, you can't actually use the scrap effectively or use the salvage effectively to upgrade your stuff. Like it partners and works very well.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Which I think in a reboot scenario,
Hmm.
that should be something you'd wanna do. Like, you're creating more attachment, like, there
Hmm.
is actually a payoff to spending more time with Laura and kinda going through these things. Because for me, like, the commando rifle was, like, my favorite thing to use in this game. Takes you quite a while to get everything you need to
Hmm.
be able to build it. So it's like, I mean, yeah, I went for completion, but halfway through playing it, I've realized, like, wow, I actually really like more about this than I realized. Because you and I played this at the
Hmm.
same time when we first got it. I think it was like on PlayStation Plus or something like that.
Hmm.
And you and I were going through pretty much the same experience, and we couldn't put it down.
No, no, it was riveting. And then, granted, like my most memorable actions from it are from the multiplayer like perspective, and we'll get to that in a little bit.
Oh,
But that
yes, we
being
will.
said, still a beautiful story. And this is still like I'm still very much the gamer who like I don't give a rip about the multiplayer. If your game focuses on multiplayer and has no story, I'm probably not gonna pick it up. I just don't enjoy it as much, which is unfortunate because it also means I don't buy a lot of video games anymore because most things focus on either battle royale now or multiplayer. So like having that good story there is just it's such a draw for me in a video game. So
Yeah.
to actually play through this story that's very, very well done was just, so good. And granted, like again, like I loved Uncharted, and those games had as good as the gameplay was, it took a back seat to the story and the cinematics that you got. And this kind of felt like it was doing the same thing. And again, like when you say like the gameplay takes a back seat, it doesn't even mean the gameplay is bad. It still plays remarkably well. Um, like I don't even remember like ever really getting mad at the gameplay for this thing.
No, I think the gameplay was very clean.
Mhm.
It didn't necessarily try to do anything crazy. It just did, core aspects extremely well.
Mhm.
And that's why I don't think it makes any sense to truly get into narratives and being upset about those because there is a payoff for how you choose to spend your time in this game.
Mhm.
So let's just kind of put the skills and all that kind of stuff on the back burner for now. The actual core story of the game, to me, really stood out because it reminded me quite a bit of how Indiana Jones tells a story, right?
Mhm.
Like we're not gonna once again, we're not gonna tell you beat for beat what happens. I say beat for beat every retro review, by the way. Uh, but
Although we got pretty close beat for beat with Assassin's Creed 3. Like we fell into that one pretty good. But again, one of my favorite games. I couldn't help myself. I love it.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Well, so that's why we'll try to do this a little bit differently for this
Yep.
one.
Mhm.
But the reason why I say it's like Indiana Jones, so for those of you who haven't watched the Indiana Jones movies, we're not going to say the fourth one. We'll just say the first three.
Yep.
Uh, really, how the plot develops in this game is that you have small elements that are introduced to you that are kind of in the same vein. Let's kind of use like Last Crusade as an example. Okay,
Mhm.
like in the Last Crusade, you have Indiana Jones who's kind of following the breadcrumbs of his father's lifelong pursuits, not truly like being bought in the entire time, right?
Mhm.
Like there are certain aspects of it that he recognizes and he knows just because he's been around it his whole life. But there's kind of an escalating series of events that happen as all good movies tend to, right? And you have to kind of ask yourself, what do I believe in this is, actually real in from Laura's perspective,
Mhm.
and what of this could be fiction? And so throughout the game, you kind of get hit with that, but then you're introduced to supernatural elements that you can't explain too, right?
Mhm.
So you're off balance the entire time, not just because you're playing, a game that obviously you want to explore the plot of,
Mhm.
but also because you're looking through this of the lens of Laura, who is literally trying to figure this out for the first time because she's never adventured before.
Mhm.
So it's a really fun slow burn that kind of occurs. And when you and I talked about the ending of this game, because we beat the game almost around the same time, I remember Joe like messaged you going, my adrenaline was flowing big time for like 3 hours,
Mhm.
like just seeing how the payoff of this works. So what I thought was really cool about this, we talked about how this boat gets torn in half at the beginning. We're not talking about like a kayak or something. Like this is a big ass ship that gets ripped in half
Mhm.
by a storm. You find out there's this angry god who is called Hamiko, the Sun Queen, and she can manipulate storms that have trapped venturers on this island, the island of Yamatai, for many years. And that's who these Solari Brotherhood homies,
Mhm.
they're literally worshiping her.
Yeah, out there getting their Himiko on,
Yeah, they're
just
looking.
really enjoying the vibe. The sun
Yeah,
goddess is coming out there, or maybe a little Stockholm syndrome because she likely marooned them there, and they're just they're just living it now.
yeah, this is just my life
Yeah,
now. This is what
yep.
I
This
do.
this is
Yeah,
okay. Yep, this is what we do.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Well, the good news here is that the Solari Brotherhood do have a purpose, right? What they've been trying to do is find who would be a worthy vessel of helping bringing Hamiko back into the physical plane, and
Mhm.
and so that is kind of where we'll leave the story, right? Because that's what drives most of the struggle in this game is trapping people on the island in order to find who this supposed person is going to be at some point.
Yes, and while you can maybe make a few guesses what will happen after that plot reveal, yeah, play yourself. You can confirm those. You can confirm your suspicions on your own because we will not give any more away.
It's just truly it's
Hmm.
I would feel bad for ruining this for someone, because you and I went into this both not really having either played Tomb Raider or having
Hmm.
not played Tomb Raider in a very long time, right?
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
for me, as someone who played it very early on and then came back to it in this format, I just had to go like, wow, this is completely different from the triangular boobed lady that I, you know,
Yeah,
probably stared at a bit
and
too long as a preteen.
I'm trying to remember exactly what the draw was for us to play because I will admit initially it wasn't the fact that, oh, hey, they rebooted Tomb Raider, let's give it a go. Because we both downloaded this off the PlayStation Network, off of PS Plus. It wasn't the free game for the month, was it?
It was, yeah, it was
It
like the
was the
free
free game,
game.
okay.
It was a free game of the
Mhm,
month in like 2015, I think,
mhm,
something like that. And to explore the multiplayer, as we kind of talked about earlier in this, uh, the multiplayer wasn't one of those things that was going to win any awards, right? It was
yeah,
kind of a bolt on, and
mhm.
you got your team deathmatch and some other stuff, right?
Yeah, not groundbreaking, but still fun. Like, it was
No,
enjoyable.
yeah,
Obviously,
yeah,
the server was still going a couple of years later. Not strong. We won't say strong by the time we came along. There weren't too many people still playing it.
no,
But,
no, there were.
it was enough for us to do what we needed to get done.
Yeah, which
Mhm,
honestly, this is the story that Joe and I we've been kind of towing the water with ever since we created this podcast.
mhm,
But we ended up actually do, doing the multiplayer, and this is
mhm,
actually Joe. Now that memories are shaking loose, you and I picked this up because we looked at the viability of trying to platinum a PlayStation game
mhm.
that was the PlayStation Plus game of the month because we hadn't done it at that point.
Yeah.
Like we had all these PlayStation Plus games that we got, but we never actually platinumed any of them yet,
Mhm.
or got 100% on. So that's what kind of got us going. Okay, let's look at the multiplayer, see how tough it is, and then play the rest of the game and see what it's like. Well, we ended up obviously being so enamored with the core game itself that
Like, we gotta do this. We gotta see it all the
yeah,
way through. Mhm.
yeah, we played the shit out of the multiplayer. So as Joe mentioned, by the time we got it, the servers didn't have a ton of
Not a lot of
people playing
traffic,
it.
no. Mm-mm.
No, not at all. So what do we do? Well, we put out a
Put out an
classified
APB.
yeah, we put out a classified ad on
Mhm.
PlayStationTrophies.org, and we ended up meeting a wonderful lady named Prem. We won't say her last name because we don't wanna
Mm-mm.
dox her here,
No, no,
but
no, but the
yeah,
Malaysian
Prem.
sensation that is Prem.
Yes,
Mhm.
and so Joe and I ended up spending, the better part of one evening. I think it was already what was it, like, 1 AM?
It
Like
was late for us because it was, like, there was a lot of accommodation, I think, on both sides of this, both the States and Malaysia, because we wanted to make sure that since she was offering to help us, that we were gonna do it in a time span that made it easy for her to participate. So we had to do it late so that she would do it at a reasonable hour in Malaysia.
yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, and then also, like, kind of the caveat was like, "Well, since we put out the wanted ad, we would like to make sure that we actually get the trophies first."
Yeah, because she was 11 hours ahead of us,
Yeah. Mhm.
and so when we ended up connecting with Prem, she was very, very trusting of us, which was kinda
Mhm.
took both of us back because, yeah, there is some risk in trying to do trophy boosting with other people online.
So
Eh
much. Oh,
yeah.
man. Mhm.
Well, so Prem and Joe and I, we ended up, like, coming up with a plan for how to, like, mine these multiplayer trophies and do it quickly,
Mhm.
and we ended up staying up till it was, like, 4 AM for us.
Easily. Like, the
Yeah.
sun was on the verge of rising.
Yes. I was gonna
Mhm.
say, like, Hamiko had already, the sun god or the sun queen, yeah, she
Mhm.
had been resting the entire time we were playing the multiplayer for this, and by the end of that, we had made a friend, and I mean, I didn't even need an energy drink that night because it was
No.
it was that much fun.
Just my god, like, over, like, the joy of, like, I think it's, like, one trophy is, like, to do, like, an absurd amount of damage in one shot. So, that
Yeah.
equated to, like, you needed 2 people right next to you with a rocket launcher, and you had to kill them both with one shot. Um Actually, no, it may have even been like because it counts the damage against you too. So like I think you had to kill like yourself and 2 other players with 1 shot. And just seeing the bodies just flying from the rocket
Oh,
launcher
yeah.
damage, like, it was oh my god, like, they ragdoll, and it was I don't know, it worked. It was hilarious.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it just
Mhm,
happened to be, like, this capstone for what really was an amazing experience that
mhm.
we didn't even have to pay for, right? Or at
No.
least, subscription fee, whatever.
Yeah.
But, yeah, at the end of all that, I mean, when you combine that one crazy night of going through that multiplayer
Mhm.
and kinda riding off the high of the main story and collecting everything in it,
Yeah.
um, it didn't feel like a chore, you
No,
know?
it was legitimately fun. And, like, every once in a while, like, I think we get, like, a random person would actually join our online game, and the
Yeah.
3 of us would just team up and like,
Oh,
"Nope.
yeah. Oh,
No,
yeah.
no, no. You're
Yeah,
no."
yeah, because we had because we ended
Mhm.
up having a Facebook Messenger tab open,
Yep.
and we were, like, going, "Yep, we're heading here. We're gonna be here.
Mhm.
Follow us here," and it
Yep.
just it worked
Just
perfection,
worked.
so
I think every random that popped in, like, we made rage quit within minutes. Like,
yeah.
they can't get a kill, they get like, everyone's out to get them, like, "Yeah, fuck that, you're not
Well, I mean,
making it." There's a plan.
they could still get kills. The
Mhm,
difference was we always had 2 of us on one team and one of them on the other, and
mhm.
so no matter what ended up happening, like, we always held the cards because of
Yeah.
that, right?
Mhm.
But at the same time, like I said, this was, like, the perfect way to end this experience because you and I really didn't want this to end, like, we were having so
No,
much
oh my
fun with Tomb
god.
Raider.
Mhm,
So, either way, yeah, looking back on this, I have nothing but the fondest of memories,
mhm.
which leads us, Joe, to review time. We gotta slap some numbers on this.
Alright, let's do this, let's
So,
do some maths.
yep, we're gonna head to the first of our metrics, which of course would be the big G for graphics. Joe, what would you give this? And let's say out of a possible 5 salvage in
Ooh,
honor of
5
Tomb Raider.
salvages. Okay,
Yeah.
ver I was actually wondering what we were gonna do with this too, because tigers are out, pistols are out. Yeah, 5 salvages works great. Um, for 2013, everything out there, they're pretty cracked graphics. Trying to think of, like, other games at the time that would've, rivaled this one, and yeah, they were pretty peak. I would say I mean, go 4. 4 salvages out of 5 on this one.
Okay, that's fair enough.
Mhm,
What I gave this, was a little bit higher because I did compare it to other games at the time.
mhm,
At this point in time, I did play Uncharted, obviously not as much as you had,
mhm.
but I also had spent a lot of dash time with Gears of War.
Ah,
So
yes.
so I was very much, interested in the over the shoulder,
Mhm,
let's see how they end up adapting this for Tomb Raider. And really, the graphics, whether it's the cutscenes, whether it's just the standard gameplay, there were
mhm.
moments where I would just stand on the beach and just watch the wildlife and everything
Yeah.
interact.
Mhm,
And so definitely gorgeous. The colors are on point. It didn't feel like
mhm.
a Snyder film where everything kind of just blended in with the the darkness.
It was
Um,
just broody the whole time.
yeah, yeah, no, it was a graphically very beautiful
Mhm.
game that, frankly, once again, it was a shame we had to stop playing it, but, I'm gonna give it a 4.5 salvage out of 5. That I
Alright.
I really do think it's for the time that it was
Mhm,
absolutely beautiful. Um, and kind of blending into the next, the gameplay for me, uh, was just so amazing because, like I've mentioned, I love the skill
mhm.
system. I was actually really sad when I maxed out skills because
That
I
meant the
loved.
journey was done.
Well, yeah, yeah, seriously,
Mhm,
because, there was a purpose to everything you picked up. There was a story to every item, you know, like, for me, that was the hook, right?
mhm.
And so it didn't just have to look good, right? Like, it played really, really well. Like, I never had to reset the game because of glitches. I really enjoyed the takedowns. Like, takedowns was
Yeah.
something that Tomb Raider hadn't really done yet, and takedowns were extremely rewarding in this game.
Mhm.
So for me, gameplay is also going to get a 4.5 out of 5 salvage. But how about you?
Yeah, that's where I'm going with this one too, is 4.5 out of 5. Just because, like, like, I can't look back and honestly think, like, where maybe maybe one part where I feel like you're back in a portion of the ship and you have to do some sort of swinging thing from the ceiling. And I remember maybe something like along that lines of being a little wanting. They could have done a little
Yeah.
better there. But other than that, like I don't remember the gameplay being too frustrating. Um, so yeah, 4.5 out of 5 salvage on this one.
All right. Well, that brings us, of course, to replay value, which,
Mm-hmm.
Joe, this has been the one metric that you and I have either been, wouldn't say polar opposites on, but we tend to have the most points
Mm-hmm.
dividing us on this one. So for replay
Yes.
value,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, what do you think this one has?
See, this one's interesting because like I do remember really liking this game, like really liking it, and I haven't replayed it. I haven't gotten back around to it, just
Yeah,
because
fair
I don't
enough.
know, like I don't know if I'm just like a weird, old millennial gamer where I enjoy playing the same few games over and over again. So like I'll replay all the Uncharted's, I'll replay Assassin's Creed 3, but I haven't picked this one back up, and I loved it. Um, so But I also am gonna think of, like, from, like, the perspective of, like, someone else. So maybe if someone connects to this Lara Croft as much as I connected to Nathan Drake, I would say it's probably would have a higher replay value than I'd give it. I'm gonna go 3.5 salvage out of 5
Oh,
on this one.
okay.
But I could see, like, if anyone even said, like, they'd give it 5 salvage out of 5, like, "Yeah, that makes sense. That works. That checks. If you love this game and you're gonna play it, at the start of every summer, like, yeah, you will not hear a complaint from me. No disagreement on it.
See, now, so I agree with what you said, and what I think, for me, because I've played it twice, right, since I initially played it, and what I would end up doing if I did play it again is pursuing some of the other weapons that I didn't use nearly as much,
Mhm.
and to me, that's where I think the replay value really lives in this game is fleshing out some of these skill trees differently, because you don't really have to pick and choose, you can max them out,
Oh, yeah.
it's nothing
Mhm.
crazy, but
You can get all of them. Mhm.
you could choose a different type of play style,
True.
and so that's and the game doesn't force you to do it, but you could,
Mm-mm.
do it on your own. So
Yeah.
for me, I do agree with you on a 3.5 out of this,
Mhm.
mostly because when we dogged Donkey Kong a little bit, it was because most of us only played the first fifth of that game if we
Yeah.
were, if we're
Mhm.
lucky. For this, I would definitely replay the entire game again. So,
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
so 3.5 for sure for me.
Yep,
Um,
and I guess I really should have specified, like, I have played this game twice, but it wasn't by choice. It's because I missed something. So,
yes.
like, "Son of a bitch," and you can't like Uncharted, you can just select a chapter and pick up and just go back a little bit. In this game, you can't do that. Like, no,
Yeah.
you miss this dialogue, you do have to restart the whole game. It's like, motherfucker.
Yeah.
Was
It's
not
true.
hoping for that. Mhm.
Yeah. Fortunately, it didn't happen to me.
No.
Well, Joe, that brings us to, of course, the music of the game.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah, what were
Mhm.
your thoughts on Tomb Raider's soundtrack?
And because I'm having to go back and think about it, I think I'm gonna come pretty low on this one. Like, it doesn't stand out to me. Like, I can't I mean, I don't think of hating it. Like, I can't be like, "Oh, it just completely didn't fit it." But, like, to me, like, it doesn't get my heart going, like, hearing Drake's theme start in every Uncharted game.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't get me going, like anything from Assassin's Creed, to bring those 2 games up again. I'm not jamming like I am in Donkey Kong Country. So, this one, like, I feel like it's like any Hollywood movie where, like, the music's there, it makes sense with it, but it's not Hans Zimmer.
Yeah.
It's there, it's well done, but it's nothing standout. So this time I'm gonna go, it's there, 2.5
Okay.
salvage out of 5. It's halfway on the scale for me. I could take it or
Yeah.
leave it.
Which, honestly, I'm right there with you because, like you mentioned, Tomb Raider doesn't have a theme that you could play that I would instantly recognize and go, "Yep, that's Tomb Raider."
Mhm.
Now, like, the rest of the game is heart pounding where it needs to be,
Yeah.
and when you're kind of in, like, the low-lying areas and you're just kinda going from place to place,
Mhm.
like, yeah, yeah, the music
It
is
fits.
appropriate, yeah.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's not recognizable music, and
Mm-mm.
so that's what is probably the low point here because Gears of War has it, Assassin's Creed has it, hell, even Borderlands for the licensed music that they used, a lot of
Yeah.
people just go, "Yep,
Mhm.
that's the heavy, I know it's a Borderlands game."
Yep.
You know,
Mhm.
like that kind of thing did not happen for Tomb Raider, so it does kinda feel
No.
like a little bit of oversight, or
Mhm.
maybe they ran out of money and this is just how they wanted to get by,
I mean,
but
if it's a
yeah,
corner you're gonna cut, it's not a bad one to cut because that
yeah,
it doesn't like, yeah, like, it didn't take you out of the game, but
yeah,
it wasn't like, the Arkham series where it just made you feel like you're a part of the animated series as a kid and now you're playing it.
yeah,
Um, yeah,
yeah,
it doesn't add to it, I guess is its big fault. It doesn't suck you in, it doesn't captivate you, it doesn't leave any lasting memory for it. So it's like it's music, it fits, but that's all
yeah.
it does. It gets the
Whi
job done.
which honestly, this is a really interesting tale that our scoring tells for Tomb Raider because so far it's the highest gameplay rating that we've given. It's the highest,
Mhm,
replay value that we've given,
mhm.
and it's the best graphics that we've given for the time. So, it's the lowest rated overall that we've given to a retro
Whoops.
review, though.
Yeah. Wow, that's pretty mean because everything's gotten a C so far from us, and
Well,
these were
hold
games
on.
that we supposedly really liked.
Hold on. So, Assassin's Creed got a
Mhm.
79%. Donkey Kong Country also get a 79% if we round up.
Yep.
Tomb Raider gets a 75% overall from us.
Oh.
So, it's interesting how that music just kinda hamstrings the whole
Yeah,
rest
it
of
did.
the rating.
It
Yeah,
did. Damn. Because yeah,
yeah,
love this game. Like
yeah,
if I would pay for this game if I didn't get it for free. Would happily have paid for this game, but I got it for free, so I got it for free. Um,
yeah. If they put a donate button on there, I'd definitely donate.
yeah.
I do actually own
Mhm.
so in the Survivor trilogy here, I do
Mhm.
own the first one and the second one. I believe Rise of the Tomb Raider was the
Yep.
second one,
Mhm.
or maybe it was the Raider Awakens and the last Raider, and then
The Raider
Rise
rises.
Rise
Yep.
of yeah. But yeah, I mean,
Mhm.
so if anything, the lasting legacy of this game is that when you do a reboot, there are
Mhm.
ways that you can responsibly do it, and this one does do that.
Yeah.
It starts you over from a Laura that no one knows enough about yet. She's still
Mhm.
trying to figure herself out, and through this adventure, you do get to have some growth. You don't just have someone who's invincible, you get to experience someone with real emotion and some actual tribulations,
Yeah,
actual
absolutely.
challenges.
And I mean, I'd even have to say, like, when we compare this to like our other two retro review games, like obviously Donkey Kong Country, like anyone can pick that up and go with it because it's an old, Super Nintendo game. Like all of those are just meant to like pick up and play really easy. But like as far as Assassin's Creed goes, like comparing this to three, and I love Assassin's Creed 3. Like I may even recommend this more, like to someone if they had asked like which one would you play first, or should I play first? I'd probably say Tomb Raider should be played
Yeah,
first. Just because um, like, you don't need backstory. Like, Assassin's Creed 3, like, it helps to have played the games before, whereas this one, like, nope, you can pick it up, you can play it right away, you can get behind the main I can't see anyone playing this game and having a serious problem with Lara in this game.
yeah,
Because, like, obviously, like, Connor, like, he really divided the franchise. People loved him or they hated him. There's no one who's like, "Connor was okay." It's like, "Nope, I loved Connor," or, "No, I didn't like Connor." But in this game, like, I don't think anyone was like, "Fuck Lara Croft." Um,
yeah,
yeah, no, she was great, and it was a good, refreshing, like, grounded take on the character. So, yeah, like, I guess I don't wanna say, like, don't take our ratings seriously, but just because we rated her lower than the past 2 games, like, I don't know, like, this is all the music's fault. It's the music's fault because it's a fun fucking game, and you should definitely try it. Definitely play this game.
Yes, absolutely.
Damn
And
mediocre music.
yep, and as you know, and as this, if you do decide to go back and get this game,
Mhm,
there's a lot there that you can do. Like we said, that's not just story driven.
mhm.
So, I mean, seriously, as we do on this show, as we like to dissect things, truly dissect Tomb Raider 2013 as much as you can. And Joe, I mean, I guess if you want to say the tagline, we've kind of been awkward about that the last few weeks,
That's
haven't we?
true. Yeah. So, been awkward about it. We forget to do it for the first few episodes here. So, it's now time for us to say goodbye, which means that until next time, we'll just keep on dissecting. And Prem, if you are a One Malaysian listener, thank you.